Hello and welcome back to our show. For the next couple of months, I will be using this platform to allow viewers to get to know and interact with our 2020 Democratic political candidate, as well as discuss current social issues. In order for us to make the change that we want to see, we have to be educated and politically active. First, let me just say I am so happy that I can see so many strong, wonderful women running this year. And I am honored to know and have some of them on my show. Today, we have with us two great leaders who are actively working to better our community and make a difference. Ladies, can you please introduce yourself and tell people who you are? Starting with you, Michelle.
My name is Michelle Siegel. I am the Democratic candidate for District 27, which is Snyder, Montour, Columbia, Northumberland, and a little bit of Luzerne right on the Columbia border. It's a very rural district. Nobody has challenged the incumbent, Mr. John Gordner, who's the Senate Majority Whip, since he initially ran in 2004. So couldn't sit back anymore and let an empty ballot position sit there. That's not democracy to me. And I think people need to I believe in of, by, and for the people, right? I believe in our Constitution, and people should have choice, and people should have to hear the counter to somebody else's position. I think that's what all of this about. So that's why I decided to drop my hat in. So thank you so very much for having me here.
And I'm Patty Smith. So I'm running for state representative in the 104th district in Pennsylvania. And that is most of Dauphin County and a little piece of Lebanon County. If you're watching from outside of the area, my district borders right on the city of Harrisburg. So that's how you know, Central PA. The reason I'm running is because I'm a longtime government watchdog. And for those of you who don't know, Pennsylvania is the 5th most corrupt state in the country. And the reason for that statistic is based on how many elected officials have been convicted of a crime. Mm-hmm. So it's a real statistic. It's not just a talking point. And with the lack of campaign finance reform and gift bans, here in PA, you can legally buy your very own politician if you can afford to donate enough money. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it provides a system where everyday people who are not well connected or not exceptionally wealthy are not able to have a voice in government. And you can see that through the pandemic, that just really shone a big bright light on all the failings in Pennsylvania in protecting everyone and making sure that all things are equal. So I couldn't sit back anymore and let that happen. I had to step forward. I ran in 2018, almost won back then. And so I'm running again this year, and I'm proud to say that I'm the first candidate ever to get more votes in the primary than my opponent, Sue Helm. So it's looking exceptionally well for our campaign this year.
I'm going to clap my hand because I was following you last time when you ran, and I was rooting for you, and I am thankful and glad that you made it. That's a story of hope. So to me, that's just telling people not to give up, I think. And Michelle, thank you so very much for everything that you're doing. And let's start with you, Michelle. If you can just talk to us about not just why you were running, but what is your campaign in details? I know in the introduction, you just told us briefly what you're doing, but if you can highlight your campaign and what you're passionate about.
So my grandmother was a part Native American. Her mother was kind of like a medicine woman. She was like the woman people called when they had a broken knee or something, and she would tend to it. So my grandmother used to take me for, that was my great-grandmother, sorry, I don't know if I distinguished that. And my grandmother used to take me for walks up in the woods She would teach me to find tea berries to eat and stuff like that. We'd find walking sticks and different bugs, and I'd collect them. And one day she took me to the top of the mountain, and it was completely flat, and it was just a very strong juxtaposition as a child. It was trees, 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 and then just nothing. And I turned to her and I said, "What is this, Grandma?" And she said, "It's death." And I didn't, I was like 8, 9 years old. I didn't understand what she was saying. I didn't understand what that meant. It was just very powerful and just very stuck in my mind. So as I got older, I found out that that was a unlined coal ash pit that the local coal burning power plant dumped their wasted coal ash in, which is very high in toxic chemicals. It's very high in sulfur and stuff like that. And it actually got into the groundwater and polluted my grandparents' well. And my grandfather got colon cancer. My uncle got ulcerative colitis. Now, my grandfather was a World War II vet. Nothing kept him down. He had lots of reconstructive surgeries to have bowel taken out, and he lived into his 90s. My uncle, on the other hand, was a mechanic. He fell through the cracks of our healthcare system. He didn't have great health insurance, and the bills started piling up. And in rural Pennsylvania, we don't, people have a lot of pride. They don't typically like to ask a family member for money, even though everybody in my family would have helped him out in a heartbeat. And it turned to cancer, and he did not make it. He passed away in his early 50s. And no, it's okay. It's something that always stuck to me because I saw personally how my family has been hurt by the way things are, and how our legislature in Pennsylvania typically legislates for private industry and their donors, their private industry donors and their corporate donors, and they don't think about the people that they're supposed to be representing. And I went to school then for environmental science at Susquehanna University. I have a BS in environmental science. I did a lot of research in climate change and then groundwater hydrology to understand how that spread into my grandparents' well. And then I also then kind of got into, I've always been big into music. I play the flute, I sing. So my local church was looking for a music teacher for the youth. So I signed up to do that, and I did that for a while. And then they needed a youth leader, and all the kids were like, "Michelle, we love you. Sign up for that." So I did that. And then the one day after school, we had youth group, and all the kids are running around, and everybody was so happy, and they're playing, and the kids are it was just a great moment. But in my head, I just looked at them and I said, who's thinking about their future except me and their parents? Like, I think about them all the time. What's their life going to be like when outside of school? What kind of environment are they going to raise their children in? And that's when it hit me that the best thing I could do for those kids is run for office and get elected and legislate with their future in mind. And that's why I decided to do this. I have a 9-year-old little African-American boy, and he is my life. Alex is everything to me, and I want him to have a good life. I want him to be proud of his country. I want him to be proud of his state. I want every opportunity for them. And when I see these guys that have been in office for so long not thinking about their constituents' future because of a donor, it has to stop. And that's why I'm doing this. And that's what the forefront of my campaign is. It's about the one thing my campaign is working on right now is a rural Bill of Rights. A lot of rural people are angry. They don't feel like their voice is heard in any legislation. So we're working on trying to take all these concerns like investment in education, investment in much needed broadband, investment in infrastructure, things like that, and adding it and making our platform central to that takes all these things that would help my son, that would help maybe draw more industry into this area so we can build up our jobs. I mean, these aren't crazy things. That we can do these things if we had a proper legislature that was focused on being of, by, and for the people. And that's not what is happening. And so that's what a short answer. I could keep going on of why I'm doing all this.
And you said now issues that we will definitely go back and discuss one by one, because to me, you summarize everything that we've been talking about for the past maybe few years. We're seeing a lot of changes that is happening now. Since, and I'm not going to just say since the presidency of Donald Trump, but you know, racism, for example, it's an issue that we all struggle with, and we all have some biases. I cannot say this enough, but the difference between having a bias and using those thoughts or way of thinking to discriminate against someone or make them feel less or lower their opportunities. And I think that's what, you know, you wanted for your son, and that's what I wanted for my kids, and that everyone else who's feeling they're not fitting, basically, for one reason or another. And we will get back to that later. But Patty, it's your turn now.
Thanks.
And we're not just going to be talking, letting you just talk. We are going to discuss, but I just want you to be able to introduce your campaign and what you think first. Get that out of the way, and we'll go deep.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, you know, I've spent a lot of time. I'm a certified public manager from Millersville University, and I've spent a lot of time in local and state management. And from that and my government watchdog time, you know, I just really saw the inequities in the state. And it's inequities in everything. You know, when people think of inequality, they think of gender or race and things like that, religious, but we do have that. And that's a big thing here in Pennsylvania, because we're one of the few states that don't have protections for that. You know, you can still be fired here in Pennsylvania. They just passed it, you know, in the Supreme Court, but Pennsylvania has no protections for people who are different in our state. And we have inequalities in education. You know, I've got 2 major school districts in my district that are underfunded every year from the state. And what that means is that someone's education is really going to be based on the zip code they live in. And we can't have that. You know, people often ask me why I care about education when I don't have children. But the simple answer is that, you know, at some point, my generation and the ones before and after me, we're going to age out of the workforce. And the children in school, my neighbors' kids, my nieces, nephews, they're all going to run our country. They're going to run our state. They're going to run our municipalities and our businesses. And don't we want them to have the best education possible? Don't we want them to have everything they need? And that's really the basis and the importance of education across the board. It doesn't matter if you have kids in school, like Michelle said. There has to be more people fighting for these kids than just their parents and us. And that's why it's important for us to get the message out there, because a lot of people don't realize that. And of course, the inequities in school funding then affect our property taxes. My 2 districts where we have unequal funding, where they're getting less than they should because the state isn't running all the money through the fair funding formula, they have the highest school taxes, which is no shock. Because if the district isn't going to get it from the school, then they're going to have to reach into the pockets of the residents. And then we have people losing their homes because they can't afford the taxes. You know, we've got inequalities in healthcare, where communities of color and low-income communities don't have the same access. I know the northern area of my district is very rural, like Michelle's district is, and just getting to a doctor, if you don't have a car, is an all-day trip. And we've really got to stop that. You know, we have to consider everyone in government, and that's not being done. You know, being able to reach out and talk to your legislature, that is a right. But these people who are elected now, like the one that I'm running against, you can't even get an appointment, let alone a town hall. I mean, she had a town hall scheduled in 2018. And when she found, this is no lie, you can look on Facebook because she made a big deal out of it. She found out that Democrats were coming to ask her questions, and she canceled the entire event.
I remember that clearly.
Yeah. She said, I'll have one after the election, but here we are 2 years later, and no shock, she's never had that. You know, and same way with the environment. Right now, the environment and the decisions being made on the environment are being controlled by big money corporations, by lobbyists for those corporations. And, you know, your ability to get good representation shouldn't hinge on how much you can afford to donate or if you can afford your own lobbyists. And that's really how it's going right now. And it sounds like a cliche because it's always been that way, right? Every year you hear candidates saying over and over again, this is a problem, this is a problem. But you have to elect new people to office if you want things to change, because your only recourse against these politicians, unless they're doing something illegal, is to vote them out of office. And once you start voting people out of office for not doing their jobs, I can assure you a lot more of them are going to do their job. So you've got to send that message, and that's why it's so important to vote.
Thank you very much. This is a lot of summarization to our issues here, especially in Harrisburg. Education is the foundation of everything, like you said, Patty and Michelle before you. If we don't have educated kids or ourselves, if we don't educate ourselves every day with what is happening in the world, we are not going to make an informative decisions or make a change. And like you said, if you want to change something, you go ahead and do it. Do something, but you can't expect things to change on their own. And I think one of the main things that we are focusing on this year is voting and trying to get people out to vote. I'm going to ask both of you a question, and if you can answer it. This is one of my Republican friends. She sent a message asking. She said, "I don't want to vote. I don't want to change party." Let me read it. "I don't want to change party, but I don't want to vote Trump. What should I do?" I mean, of course, I answered her, but I would like her to hear your answer, because we have so many voters who are maybe used to voting a specific party because of their family, the way they grew up, or they feel like, I can't change that. Yeah. It's like my name. We need to talk to those people. So let's start with you, Michelle or Patty, either one of you.
Well, I can take it. Yeah, I mean, you know, this is one of the things, if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see that I bring up a lot. It's that I wish people would stop focusing on the letter behind someone's name and start focusing on the person as a candidate. And I have Republican friends too who are really working with me to try to change this thought process that you have to vote straight ticket or you have to vote a certain way because you've always voted that way. But you've really got to start doing your research, because now more than ever, everything you read, everything you see is propaganda, just about. It is so hard to cut to what the truth is. And if you're falling into believing that propaganda, you know, that all Democrats are horrible people, or all Republicans are, you know, stupid, or, you know, from a certain part of the country, if you start believing those things, you are really hurting yourself. You're hurting the community that you live in, because this propaganda only serves the people who are telling it to you. They want you to believe that, because the easiest way, and I can tell you this from a watchdog point of view, the easiest way for crooked politicians and the ethically challenged to get away with lining their pockets and doing favors is to pit the constituents and the voters against each other. Because while we're busy chatting back and forth, or I hate you for this reason, and you do this and you do that, they're in the background laughing and getting away with everything that they've ever wanted. And so we've got to be able to look past what we're being fed and understand the purpose and the reason we're being fed that, and really start to think about things and research things on our own. You know, I think it really takes courage to stand up and say that my party isn't what it used to be, or my party doesn't represent my values anymore, because it's really courageous to challenge yourself about your beliefs and check in on them every now and then, and see if they're still accurate and still accountable to you. And, you know, here in Pennsylvania, nobody knows how you vote.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse not to vote with your heart and what you think is right. And just do your research. I mean, now we don't have the straight ticket voting button anymore.
Can you explain that again? Because I'm sorry to cut you off, but can you explain that again? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't know that you don't have to actually go register a Democrat or do that.
Right. Yeah, we used to have a button when you went into the polls, and you could just push the button and it would check off all the Democrats or all the Republicans. And it was a real easy way for people to say, I'm just going to vote my party all the way down. Well, they've done away with that. And I think it's a good thing personally, because I think, or I would hope that it encourages people to look at candidates one-to-one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hope that people take the time to vote all the way through the ticket and not just stop at president or congressional member, you know, senator. The people at the bottom of the ticket, like myself for state representative, we are just as important. You know, federal candidates are really important, but like for Michelle and I, you know, the state house and the state senate, we're the ones that are going to protect you, you know, from federal corruption, from laws that don't serve you. We're the ones that are going to be on the line day to day, fighting for Pennsylvania's interests. And so I really encourage you to do your research on candidates. And again, nobody's going to know, right? If you're Republican and you vote for a Democrat, unless you tell somebody, no one's going to know. So you can really honestly vote with your heart.
Michelle?
Yeah, so I think for a lot people, making that switch to change your party on your voter registration is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not somebody that likes to push that so much, because I think that people, because of losing the straight party ticket, I think people are going to have to look at the person besides that person and look at somebody that's been in office for almost 20 years and what have they done to actually make your life any better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a tough thing, right? Because in my district, it's a lot of Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to show them that there is another choice, that there is somebody that's actually going to fight for them and listen to them and be an advocate for them. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what this election is and how people take this and how people take the time. I do think in rural, people like the idea a little bit of an underdog on a ballot. I'm finding when I have conversations with people, I think that because a lot of rural people feel that they're not thought of down in Harrisburg, and they are the underdog a lot of ways. So I do think this election is going to be different and interesting. And you don't need to switch your party. You can vote for whoever you want on that ballot, and nobody's going to know. And that is your choice. That's what the Constitution says that you have the right to do. And that's what I think we need to get back to, like voting for the person that you feel is going to do the most for you, not the D, the R, the I, the libertarian, green, whatever you run as. It's about what you're offering your possible constituents. And that's what this election is about. At least I'm trying to have that conversation with the people in my district. And again, it's going to be interesting to see. And I do think there's going to be a lot of people that don't realize that the straight party is gone. And that's important when you get in there. And it's important to take the time and go all the way down the ballot. Now, if you choose to request a mail-in, you can do it at the leisure of your own home. There's not that rush of waiting in line with a lot of people behind you and you got to be fast. Yeah. I think mail-ins are going to give people more of an opportunity to sit there and look down that person and maybe even go on the internet, look up that person's name, look at their platform. Stuff has changed here a little bit. Like, a lot of people in my area used to take a list with them of who they were going to vote for. And yeah. Now you can do that from your home and do some research. And I would, the one thing that my campaign is trying to do here is show people what has been voted on in Harrisburg and how it has taken from you and taken from your community. And I hope people will take the time and look at that for Patty and myself and see what we're actually running on and what voting for us could mean to your community.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't even realize what we lost so far. We discussed before that so many people feel that, okay, my voice does not count. I don't see any change or it's getting worse. But they don't know that so many things that get affected by not just the Congress and the president. People don't vote, like you said, for any other offices. And we cannot do that. We can't keep doing this and expect change. And at the same time, I myself was guilty. One time went to vote, and I looked. There's few names there that I didn't recognize, and it to me was just eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I mean, when you were doing the whole Democrat palette, but after that I felt really bad, and I start studying and learning, and that's what we all need to do. Just know about who is running this year and who do you want to vote for, and vote your conscience. Michelle, I'm just going to get back to what you said about your son and raising him in a better country. To me, I am feeling the same way, and not just, we cannot address an issue because it affects us. And I think that's what got us to people thinking that systemic racism does not exist, for example. Or, you don't even know how many people got into my shows before or on my page and say, you made up, like personally made up the systemic racism. It's all in your head. So I think a lot of people, I know, a lot of people don't think any issue that does not affect them directly is an actual true issue. So with that being said, what do you think about everything going on now with the police brutality, the ongoing over 400 systemic racism that it's facing Black people in this country? And feel free to share what you want to share.
So what's really interesting is, and I share this story with a lot of people when they tell me there isn't, racial injustice, all stuff going on. My son one day, he likes to put his hoodie up, and he had a teacher say to him, "You shouldn't wear your hoodie up. Bad people wear the hoodie up." And all I thought about was Trayvon Martin. Yeah. And I was very upset, and my son was upset. Because he's starting to pick up on these things. Like, I would notice sometimes if a group of kids were playing and a couple of the kids would do something that was bad, and the parents are watching, don't say a word. When my kid would jump in and start doing it, then all of a sudden he was yelled at. It was an issue. So this stuff does occur. I don't think people realize it, or sometimes I don't even think people realize that they're doing it, which is a little concerning. I do think the George Floyd thing, even in rural, I don't know. I mean, even a lot of police in my area are like, yeah, that was disgusting. Yeah. And I think what's interesting here is you hear these terms like defund the police and stuff like that. And in rural Pennsylvania, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I know a lot of rural people, they like their police.
Yeah.
They went to school with them. They go to the local, bar with them and have a drink. It's a personal connection. And what was brought to my attention, and something that I didn't think about because I just did a town hall on police reform, was that that's what urban areas want. They want their police to be local people hired, that everybody knows everybody. And that idea, I think, would go over very well if we constructed it around that framing for rural people. I think that they would be like, I didn't think about that. They don't have my buddy Bob that works at the police department that I've known for 40 years. They get people hired in from different areas and they don't know their community. And when we did I helped organize a Black Lives Matter George Floyd candle vigil a few weeks back. And the first thing I did was contact our local police department because we all know each other here. And I just said, we're doing this. I'm just letting you know it's going to be very peaceful. It's a candle visual. We're going to walk in silence. And I said, I just want you to know that, that I don't want you to think this is like I hate cops or anything kind of thing. And he goes, I didn't see that as all. I thought this came across as a very respectful event. Yeah. And because you reached out, I'm going to send some officers down so that when you're walking, we can block the street off and stuff, and it can be done safely. And that's great, but I don't think a lot of urban areas and stuff have that, right? They don't have that connection with their police. And I think that that's something that needs to work on. I agree with the idea that we need to reinvest more in community programs. We need to get back to where you could just go to the YMCA and not have to pay a fee to attend it. That let's get the kids in programs like this and get back to a sense of community. We have a place called the Regional Engagement Center that I volunteer at every summer. Again, they couldn't do it this summer because of COVID, but they have a kids' summer camp. And it's a place for kids to just go. And the borough actually in our community does pay a lot of the application fees, which is nice, so that these kids, lower income kids and stuff, can get it. And what I run is a theater program so that we do a musical throughout the summer. And then at the end of the year, we present that. And it's a great way for youth that don't have the chance or the opportunity to get a arts or music in their life in a way because they can't afford it. And I do it for free because I think it's super important that we get these kids in this stuff and get them involved and get them to see. And they're so proud. They're so proud when the community comes at night and comes to see all the hard work. And so that kind of stuff, I think people can get behind because I think it's important to all of us. We all want our communities to be thriving. We all want our youth to be doing well. And so again, I think the idea when you hear the term defund the police, it immediately sets in rural, you're firing my buddy. I'm not a part of that. But if we start explaining to people what we actually want, right? What everybody wants. They want a just system. I think what Kennedy said is one of my favorite quotes about this, and I say this all the times to people, and I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit here because I don't have it in front of me. But he said, when he was talking about the Constitution.
How do I mute? How do I mute my microphone?
Oh, I'll mute yours. You're fine. You're fine.
No, it's okay. My dog usually does that too.
No, you're not bothering us.
No. So JFK said, when talking about the founding of the country, it was founded on the principles that all men are created equal and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. And so what I say to people is, if we want true constitutional equality, if we want rights that our Constitution guarantees is for all, then we have to take what happened to George Floyd and we have to act on it so that the system works for everybody. And I think that that's all we're asking, that everybody is guaranteed rights on the Constitution, that somebody of a different skin color doesn't have to you know, I don't have to worry when a cop comes to my car, but there's a lot of people that do. And when I look at my son, it's in my head, right? Yeah, what if it's him? And I still can't make it through the George Floyd video when he yells for his mama. I can't. That's it for me. I can't watch anymore.
Someone made very comments, and they said all moms were summoned when he called for his mommy, and that, I mean, no person, no human can watch this and sit and look you in the eye and say, you know what, he deserved it. You know, even criminals, we're trying to build a justice system here. We are not going or running on the street justice where anyone can kill someone for any reason. That's why we have lawyers, that we have judges, we have courts. I mean, we have a process. And if you are convicted, there is ways. You go to jail for life, even death sentence. But no one, and I don't care who that person is, can find it in himself to sit on someone's neck, kill him, or just do anything to harm his life. But I feel you when you said you feel this way when your son is out, and this is all the mothers who raise a Black or any person of color child. I don't feel safe when my daughter is driving, and no one should feel like that. We have, and I say this a lot, and I'm sorry I have to repeat it again for you ladies. I'm a nurse. I was a nurse before, and I'm still a nurse, even though I run my own agency. But we took an oath to protect and serve. And even if I have a patient who's different, than has a different belief or anything, I'm not going to harm this person, not because they're different than I am. I am going to. I have a power, and I can do whatever. But this is. We are held under a high standard as nurses, as waiters, as customer service. Why don't we hold our police to the same standard? And I think that will sum that area, or just, you know, the defunding. I hate that word also. I don't like it. And if we have to explain a word in 5 sentences, find another word. What do you think, Patty?
I agree completely. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, systemic racism definitely exists. It's existed for a very long time. And, you know, I find it interesting. I was talking to a policeman. He's retired over the weekend. And, you know, he said, you know, he understands that the systemic racism exists. He understands that people of color are targeted sometimes more than others. He said, but, you know, when he had to qualify for his state police exam, he had to score an 80, and a person of color only had to score a 60 to get the position. And he said, how is that fair? Why, you know, why does that exist? You know, the affirmative action kind of hurt us as white people. And I said, I'll tell you why that exists. It exists because employers traditionally cannot be trusted to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's sad that we have to have laws in place to make sure that people are treated equally.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you look at it from the reverse side, affirmative action for white people has existed forever. And that's really what the systemic racism is. You know, we have been getting preferential treatment for jobs just because of the color of our skin. You know, we have been able to get mortgages on houses when people of color haven't. So, you know, it's all about perspective, and it's all about understanding, in my opinion. You know, we've got to do a better job of explaining to people who have not been affected by it really what it means, and point out examples of it. Because, you know, I think some people, like Michelle said, truly don't understand or believe that it exists because it has never affected them. But in reality, like I just said, it has affected them, but in a positive way. And so, you know, we want to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity opportunities here in our country and in our state. And we've got to start making sure that that happens. It has to be a priority for us.
Yeah.
You know, it's existed forever here in the States, but it's never been a priority. It's only been a temporary priority. It's only been lip service when protests have sprung up in the past, and you have your thoughts and your prayers and people walking along protesters and saying, you know, yes, we need change. We're going to make change. But it never happens. And, you know, we've got to start holding people accountable who can make sure that that happens and insist that it happens, because nothing else is going to change it, sadly. I think moving forward, though, if we could put something into our education system where we teach diversity and we teach the truth of history and not
the history that we want.
That's right, the real history
that exists in our heads.
That's right. I mean, you know, we have Columbus Day, right? Columbus came here and took over a country, you know, or implemented that was already inhabited, you know. And why are we celebrating him and not really mentioning what the truth of the matter is that followed him later? You know, in order to move past things, you have to understand it.
Yeah.
And if you look at Germany, you know, I have friends that are German and we've been over there many times. You know, there's not one statue of Adolf Hitler anywhere to be found.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of there's a lot of plaques and statues that talk about what he did and what he put on people just because of their religion. And so, you know, when people here say, we can't topple these statues, that's our history, you know. Well, no, that's your history, right? You don't celebrate someone or a flag that symbolizes the repression of an entire race of people. Just because that happened and it is history doesn't mean you have to celebrate it by erecting statues and flying a flag. You know, I think a lot of people don't even realize that the Nazi symbol was used as a peace symbol for Buddhists. You know, these things can be hijacked and taken over and turned into a different meaning. That doesn't mean you have to hold on to it and celebrate it just because you want to be different or just because you're not going to tell me what to do, sort of thing. You know, we've got to make an effort to really understand the shoes that our neighbors are walking in, and we have to really care about that. You know, there's a really great quote, and I'm sure I'm not going to get it right, but it said, you know, first they came for the Jews, but I wasn't Jewish, and so I did nothing. And then they came for the Unionists, and I wasn't in a union, so I did nothing. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to fight for me. You know, we're all in this together. Whether you're a person of color, or you're white, or you're Jewish, or you're Catholic, it doesn't matter. We're all people. We all want the same things. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. You know, we all want to be healthy, happy, safe, secure. We want kids to flourish and be happy, safe, and secure. We're all the same when you boil it down in there. Just get rid of the labels. The labels have been put upon us by people without permission. We can't be held to account and we can't be judged by those labels. We've got to be looked at as individuals and as people who are equal. And we really start teaching that in school at an early age because, you know, people aren't born racist, we learn it.
Exactly.
And if we can get those children before they learn it, then maybe they can even go home and teach understanding and compassion to their parents. And you know, I really think that's the best path. But in the meantime, until we have a society that is empathetic like that and understands the value of everyone, then we're going to have to pass laws to make sure.
I just I don't even know what to say. The quote that you said, it's actually, I put that in my book, in my memoir, and it truly summarized, how people don't think about things until it get to them.
Yes.
When they came to the Jews, you was like, I'm not a Jew. I'm not going to do anything. So we truly need to find a way to think right. And a historian, when your point about the statue, a historian wrote a very beautiful tweet yesterday, and she wrote down, she said, in schools we teach history, we use books, we never use the statue. So don't tell me statue is part of your history. It represents something. You're celebrating, like you said, you're celebrating a whole slavery. And a lot of people defending the Confederate flag. And a guy yesterday said, you live in Pennsylvania. This is like, okay, first of all, this is for only 5 years period of the United States in the South. And it represents, that flag represent repression, represent everything ugly about slavery and the Civil War. And to celebrate that, you are not celebrating history. You're just celebrating racism.
Yes.
Also, a great point that you said about Republican or Democrat, white or black. My problem is not about anybody's color, or and it's not a white and black problem, or Democrat and Republican. It's all of us against racism. And until, like you said, until people understand this and live and use it as the rules, we need laws. So what are you in the time that we have? I want you to get back to your campaign. In your campaign, once you win, which we're going to make sure, I'm not going to say if you win, when you win, and we all, everyone listening now, we're going to listen later, please do your part. I'm not telling you to vote for Michelle or Patty, but just go learn about them, see what they stand for, support them. And even if you are voting someone else, vote after you get the knowledge that you need. Make an informative decision. But once you ladies get elected, what laws and regulation you are going to, you're going to bring on and support so it can change everything around us until we have a society that do acknowledge issues. Any laws that you were thinking of for us to support or to go and vote on, or I'm not sure if my question is clear.
Well, there's a lot of things. I could be on all day of stuff that I would want to overturn. I mean, we need to fix the funding issues going on in our schools, and the money is not going where it's supposed to. We need to fix the Delaware loophole so that the corporations, I think it's 74% of corporations in Pennsylvania do not pay their taxes because of that loophole. And that absolutely has to be changed. I don't think it's fair that our small businesses have to pay these taxes, and these big corporations, because they can afford to put a piece of paper in a filing cabinet in Delaware, they get out of them. That's not fair. That's not, I have to pay taxes, you have to pay taxes, so should they. So those are some big things. I think that we need to legalize marijuana for the state and get those people that are in jail for it absolutely out. You're and expunged. It's insanity to me that people still get locked up for that. And again,
records for that too.
Yeah, and that absolutely needs to be addressed. We need to start in my area, work and fix the broadband problem. There is a company called Drive that is working on it, and I think that we could do a government public-private thing here and get that expanded. And same with cell phone service, very bad in my area. I would like to see that taken care of through some legislation in Harrisburg and some money directed towards that. So those are just a couple things. Again, environment, there should be a severance tax on the natural gas industry in Pennsylvania at the minimum. And that tax money could go to infrastructure if I'm reading the Pennsylvania Constitution right, it would fall under the money that if it was taxed, it would go to infrastructure, and that would something that we desperately need. And better environmental regulations. I believe we're third in asthma, and I believe I talked to a nurse, and I need to check on this, but she said we're like in the top, I think 3. I think we're number 3 for childhood cancers. I don't quote me on that. I need to check on that, but this came from a nurse, so I think it's pretty reliable. And again, like if we don't think that these things we're one of the worst states in air quality, and we have such high asthma, you don't think that those are connected. The one thing about Pennsylvania that I cannot address and try to state as much, we are doing great in all the awful things and really bad in all the good things. Our funding for schools are in like the 46th, 47th range of states. This stuff needs to be fixed. There's no reason why there's not a severance tax. Every other state that has fracking in their state has a severance tax on the fracking industry. And guess what? Those companies didn't leave. They're still there. We need to do something about the minimum wage. People debate on what it should be, but at the minimum, it needs to be increased. Our tipped workers need to be included. When you're making under $3 an hour as a tip worker, who can live on that? Who can live on that? Nobody. And I'm a huge tipper. You come to my door even to drop a pizza off, I give you like 15% because I just value the work you do. And the way I see it, the government isn't valuing hardworking workers' output and productivity in the state, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and that has to be changed. So again, that's just a couple things I could keep. My mind's like I could keep going.
I know it's not enough to cover everything, but you guys, you both touched on the vicious cycle. You're just talking about everything that happened when you don't have education or you don't have enough money. Patty did speak beautifully about that, and if we don't have a good educational system, or we have areas like Harrisburg School District and areas that don't have enough funds, what are we going to send out? We're going to have kids who are uneducated, unable to afford paying for good housing, for health insurance. What are we going to do? Those people, there is a hierarchy of needs. If we don't meet the bottom of it, they're not going to climb up to the top. They're not going to reach a point where they feel they're okay economically and they can vote, for example. And they will have to find other means to bring money. That's why there is drugs and people selling drugs. And this is all systemic. It is meant and targeted to a specific area, and you cannot change that. So Patty, I know it's not a lot of time for you to talk about everything, but you can just summarize what you think about laws and regulation. And I know you did mention that while you were talking too.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, my thing has always been, like Michelle, I've always been fighting for the underdog and for people who can't speak for themselves, things that can't speak for themselves, like animals and the environment. And I really want to continue that. I want to make sure that we bring equality to Pennsylvania, equality in the tax system, like Michelle so eloquently pointed out, there's so many companies not paying taxes here, but yet everyday citizens are paying their taxes. When I worked at the township, we would have people who I know could afford their sewer bill, not pay their sewer bill, but yet the day after they were mailed out, the elderly residents were at our counter before we opened with their cash, paying their bill. We've got to make it equal. We've got to fix the property tax system. And right now, House Bill 76 is in there. They want to eliminate the property taxes with an increase in sales tax. And you can't do that because that's not equal. If you raise sales tax, it's going to affect low-income people at much higher rates than it is high-income persons. So let's say, somebody makes $15,000 a year and they need to buy a new refrigerator.
Yeah.
Right? So the sales tax on that refrigerator is going to be a higher percentage of their annual income than it would be for somebody who makes $100,000.
Yeah.
We can't shift one tax that negatively affects low-income people with another one that negatively impacts low-income people. And, that's really important. It really stresses the importance of having good people in office. Because right now, the elected officials in the House, the Republicans, they want to push that through. They think that's a great idea, but they're not standing up for the people who need it the most. And that's what we've got to have. Same way with education. We've got to insist that all that money is run through the fair funding formula. It has to happen. It's inexcusable that we have some schools that are actually overfunded and other schools that are underfunded. We cannot continue that way. And when you say I want to make things equal, people automatically start to get nervous.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're going to take something away from me to give to them. And that's where the propaganda people just latch on and pit those two people against each other. But it's not the case. More for somebody doesn't mean less for you. It just means everybody's equal. And that's what we need to strive for. We need to do that for the environment. We've got to stop our reliance on fossil fuels. We have to. We cannot continue to keep bailing out the nuclear industry when they make almost $1 billion. They made $780 million in profit. That's after taxes. And they were still at the state capitol lobbying for a $500 million bailout, saying that they couldn't compete. Right? So, I worked really hard to fight that bailout and make sure that it didn't pass through my watchdog group. But, like I said, nobody is fighting for the regular people. No one. And we've got to get people in there. And that's what's really important to me, healthcare. Making sure that everybody has access to affordable healthcare. My rural area of my district, like I said, they don't have the broadband needed for telemedicine. They don't have access to bus routes that come down into the city. We've got to improve all of that. Jobs, we've got to increase that minimum wage, and we have to protect our unions. Some people, the unions have been vilified unfairly. And if you are a worker and you have the weekends off, you work a 5-day work week, or you have paid holiday or paid sick time, that's thanks to the union. And again, like I said earlier about, passing laws to protect people of color, it's sad that we need unions to stand up and fight against employers who just aren't going to do the right thing. But we have that, and we've got to protect it. Way with prescription drug costs, we need to be able to put a tax. I can't go on that, so that people aren't having to make a decision between their medicine and their food, or their rent. So there's so much work to be done. Like, I could just go on forever, but I really want to encourage people to do your research on the. Sadly, I think people spend more time looking at a food label than they do what a candidate is all about. And, that food that you eat is only going to be in your system for, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, maybe a couple days, right? But the people you elect are going to run your world, everything that affects you, all the laws that affect you, all the social...
Even the food that you're reading the label for.
Exactly. So, it's really important. Do your research and vote for the right person. Once that curtain closes on the polling booth, nobody's going to know. So there's no excuse not to vote for the right person. Just it's going to mean a world of difference to you and your neighbor.
Thank you very much. And Basically, the main thing we want everyone to do is to go out, learn about Michelle, learn about Patty, learn about every candidate that is running now, and make an informative decision. And not just voting, if you allow me to say that, but follow with it. There is town halls, there is meetings in your area. Go, talk, make your voice heard. And those candidates that you are going to vote for and they're going to win, make sure they keep their promises. Talk to them, reach out, mail, phone calls. I'm sure, they're not going to mind that, but do your due diligence, learn, know, and vote. And I just wanted to thank both of you for this very, very rich discussion. And I know 1 hour is not enough at all. You are both welcome to come back anytime. You just let me know when. Any issue that arises, we're here Monday and Friday from 4 to 5. You can come. You have the link now. Just hop in. If you hear us talk about a subject that you want to talk about or feel passionate about, come and join us. And I want to thank you both so very much. And thank you everyone for watching and sharing, and vote, please.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, ladies. Have a good night.
You too.
You too.